Guys, in all honesty, the plain and simple fact is that I'm a slut for drone metal. It's true. If you want my nudes, simply make music that avoids any semblance of melody and tests what I retain from the tone of guitar crust using volume and sustain, and I got you, no questions asked. In all seriousness, of course, when listening to music, the brain will always try to latch itself on a melody first, and with this, you kind of have to put your concentration somewhere else. So I think it makes sense that when you first introduce someone to it and they can't start there, they might go through something of a self-imposed mental maze just trying to grasp what the fuck the appeal to it is. But the thing is, the further you sink into that question or into the chords with that question unanswered, the further you fall out of the outside world and into this lifeless stupor. And how you respond to that could vary. In one sense, you're losing control of yourself whether you like it or not, and that's a threat. The space in your brain that previously felt so open and weightless is just aggressively being flattened, and the electrical signals in there are just being stretched out into ripples, which convinces you that time is slowing, even if it isn't, and that just throws off your mind-body coordination, it forces you out of sync. However, I think if drone metal is pulling you out of consciousness and closer to this void, you're no longer obligated to sentience either, and you could kind of embrace that and just stop looking for color in a world that shows you none, or emotional fulfillment where it's impossible. It's like it motivates me to just reprogram my brain to love that sensorially minimal state enough to let it be my replacement source of fulfillment. And I feel like when I am listening to it, I'm either fixated on the range of darks and lights between the bass frequencies and the feedback, just hypnotized by the way that shines onto the surface of my mind in rays, or trying to pick up on every slight development in a track. And because those are so subtle, I feel like if I ever snap out of that state of concentration, I notice I was just sheltered in this purely analytical, cerebral headspace. Like the only thing that was activated was the left side of my brain, and that's just safety to me. I feel like I enjoy drone metal the most when I'm only fixated on like the outer anatomy of a track, like just the rind of each instrument, but also most everything I listen to more or less hits me physically, and drone metal is just so crushing to the point where I've always had to like remain at a distance from it, and that's really interesting to me. Like it just won't hit my body, like what the fuck. Like there are just so many aspects to my experience with it that are head spinning to me, and I feel like I could just endlessly be trying to understand it better, but now I'm done just filling this video with pro-drone metal propaganda, you know, just trying to convert as many people into stans as I can. If you're not convinced, what these guys do never really just falls into one category. They have a pretty versatile archive of work in varying combinations of sludge metal, noise, power electronics, and I've seen All I Need to See has percussion, it's got legit rhythm to it has vocals. I think because usually the body have their focus in these dramatic displays of pain. Although there are moments on this thing where the guitars seem to pull you toward this scarily immersing void-like state, don't expect it to be one of those drone metal albums that's mostly just numbing and trance-like. I just think because there's such a central focus on tone here, like the very essence of the genre, what made it so enjoyable from the start, is very much present here, like more so than any other genre. And the thing is, those instrumental tones are so unique to it specifically. They're the result of main members Lee Buford and Chip King pushing what I believe is live instrumentation to its breaking point in an effort with Seth Manchester. There's so much distortion on this, it just injures the instruments and leaves them with these weird mutations. The guitars are so punctuated and resonant, it's like they're just pushed right to the front of the record and kind of feel like they're made of a liquid that's just in the process of solidifying and being encrusted into your brain, like maybe tar or plaster with outside edges already hardened and artfully cracked and nicked. They definitely have a similar quality to electrical noise, so it's like they could be coming out of an audio interface that can't get signal, which I feel like implies something neurological, and they can also have torturous effect. Like, a pain of knowing drags you out to even drone again and again, and it feels like your limbs are in the process of being glued down, so no matter how hard you try to lift them, it's just too heavy, or it's like time's being slowed slowed, so no matter how fast your movements are, there's a delay. The record can paralyze you, like a lament uses these synthetics to slide your brain into a freezing vacuum without any capacity for thought or life, just again and again. But sometimes the guitars are a lot more active and higher voltage, just like a jet black Tesla coil ripping through the inside of your body, killing you instantly as if you were on an electric chair. And a common bodily response to execution in this way is foaming at the mouth, and I feel like the city is shelled and tied up in locked-ins, whirring guitars just feel like this actively salivating mess. This is definitely a physically uncomfortable record to fully experience, mostly because its drums just hit with 100% exertion, which is made that much worse when they're surrounded in this crumbling distortion, but there is one snare in particular at the start of Eschatological Imperative that's actually more afflictive because of how polished it is. It just sounds like a body indifferently being slammed against pure titanium as blood comes out of its mouth, or it being knocked upside the head with a wood board. This record is really not for the faint of heart. It smells of blood and sweat and dirt as if it's being recorded inside of a boxing arena or a torture chamber. Of course, the vocals are utterly flesh-crawling. These have become something of a trademark in the body's discography, and to me they either sound like how someone mentally disturbed or severely traumatized would react to anything automatically before it even poses a threat, or just someone being beaten over a long period of time. Point is, they're never a sound you should become numb to, but it is kind of like the band is motivating us to become numb to them by making them so repetitive and mixing them to the back of this record. Like at some point, they just become the equivalent of white noise, and I feel like that in itself is an observation that I can dwell on. Like, it just feels so messed up. I guess it just makes me desperate for any kind of cathartic release within the music. And I feel similarly when a track builds up very thoroughly and also uses these tight, jacked, but tonally dead instruments. I guess it reminds me of how suppression of emotions can feel like this neutral force inside of your body, just making your blood thicker and thicker until it begs to bust your skin open. So that's exactly why the pained, alarm-like melodies slipped into the peaks of a lament and the city is shelled feels so perfectly timed. So yeah, these actually feel like a few of the most important things the record has to offer, as do some of the mixing tactics. Like, especially when a distorted instrument will just sweep through everything in a mix like a violent wind that spins the ground out of its place for a second, but there are also some more exquisite touches. Like, toward the end of The City is Shelled, part of the track is snatched in, and then from that negative space has to pour back into it. I just feel like because this is a record that's so focused on sound sculpting and organizing lumps of texture into these straightforward progressions, subtleties like this tend to go a long way. I think if I could say only one thing about what the experience of listening to this record is like, it's becoming the impact of an earthquake. It's hard not to mostly focus on the outer wake of it all just because it's so huge, and of course various instruments tremble like they're sturdy structures or buildings just getting ready to topple over, which kind of reminds me of how after holding yourself together for so long, you're inevitably going to feel your stability start to loosen. Genuine pain will present itself inside of your body and have to wriggle out somehow, say in the form of crying, which of course there's a messy nature to, but it's also kind of just like all of that inner wreckage moving through the inside of you in a soft waterfall, which is exactly what They're Coming is to me, because it's sectioned off into descent after descent, and in the second half, where an actual guttural scream starts to fall with it, you just feel this complete purge of everything inside of you. It's a rare instance to where I'm actually calmed by the record, but I feel like even throughout all of its chaos in my full listens to this thing, there are fleeting moments where my focus will just shift to the deep frequencies and they'll hit my chest in the exact right way and just make me feel like I've settled in this deafeningly still oceanic trench. But I guess in one sense I'm sedated there, but in another I'm confined because I couldn't breathe there. My ears or really my whole head would be clogged. But I think maybe that's why I'm so drawn to this specific part where Path of Failure feels like a release into open air. For the majority of this track, you do feel like you're submerged in all the distortion. Maybe it's like you're neck deep in the ocean during a storm. But then the base of the track starts to flatline or stagnate, and it just feels like those rushing rapids are starting to subside, and these free jazz drums appear, and it's kind of like you're washing up onto the shore with them, and you get the sense that you've been washed clean, even though you're surrounded by ruin and coastal flooding. And not gonna lie to you guys, I would not lie on this channel. It's kind of beautiful. I think overall this record is distinct in intention, both for the genre and for the band, and fulfilling in execution. So shout out to The Body, hear it if you've got time.